It is not necessary for a prince to have all the good qualities, but it is necessary to appear to have them. Niccolo Machiavelli, the prince. The most dangerous man in the room is not the one who shouts his intentions. It is the one who never reveals them. In a world that celebrates noise, rewards constant communication, and fetishizes transparency, strategic silence becomes the ultimate weapon. Those who understand this rule the world from the shadows. Those who don't become pawns in a game they never knew they were playing. Power does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It does not explain. Power observes while others speak. Power waits while others act prematurely. Power moves only when victory is assured. This is the first law of strategic operation. The discipline of the tongue precedes all other disciplines. The economy of information. Every word uttered carries a cost. Every intention revealed becomes vulnerability. Every strategy shared becomes weaponized against its creator. The constant communicator believes he builds connection and trust. In reality, he systematically dismantles his own position, surrendering advantage with each unnecessary disclosure. Those who prevail in the theater of power understand the economy of information. They create asymmetry, extracting data while revealing nothing. They recognize that information, once released, can never be reclaimed. The strategic operator does not traffic in the currency of confession, emotional disclosure, or transparent intention. These are luxuries afforded only to those who have no serious objectives to pursue. The modern world has inverted reality. It tells men to speak constantly, to communicate openly, to share their truth. This is the strategy of prey, not predators. The mechanism is simple. When you speak, you reveal. When you reveal, you become known. When you become known, you become predictable. When you become predictable, you become controllable. The strategic silence breaks this chain at its origin. As Machiavelli Foucault observed in his analysis of power relations, those who control the discourse control reality itself. The silent strategist understands that by refusing to participate in expected patterns of disclosure, they position themselves outside the machinery of social control. They become the watchers rather than the watched, the judges rather than the judged. The psychology of strategic silence. Psychological mastery begins with recognizing two fundamental truths about human nature. First, humans fear what they cannot categorize. Second, they project their own desires, fears, and intentions onto blank spaces. The master strategist creates these blank spaces deliberately. His silence becomes a mirror in which others see their own weaknesses reflected back at them. In negotiation, the first to speak loses. In conflict, the first to explain weakens his position. In competition, the first to reveal strategy forfeits advantage. In leadership, the first to justify decisions undermines authority. These are not situational tactics, but universal laws of human interaction. The disciplined mind recognizes them. The undisciplined mind violates them daily, wondering why power remains forever beyond reach. The three forms of strategic silence. There are three distinct forms of strategic silence, each serving different objectives on the battlefield of human affairs. Master them all. Deploy them according to circumstance. Allow no emotional attachment to transparency to override their utility. Information gathering silence. When others speak while you listen, asymmetry forms. They reveal positions, intentions, weaknesses, and constraints. You gain intelligence while surrendering nothing. The fool speaks first and learns last. The strategist reverses this equation, listening completely before determining whether speech serves his purpose at all. Mastering this form requires the suppression of ego. The need to demonstrate knowledge, to correct others, to display expertise. These are weaknesses that sabotage strategic position. When information flows toward you without reciprocation, victory approaches without effort. Cultivate comfort in not being acknowledged as the most knowledgeable person in the room. The truly powerful never need to prove their power. In practice, this means asking instead of telling. It means maintaining facial discipline when incorrect information is presented. It means allowing others to underestimate your knowledge. When opponents believe you know less than you do, they lower their guard. They speak carelessly. They reveal their positions while believing they educate you. Your silence becomes their trap. Authority-building silence. What remains mysterious appears more powerful than what is fully exposed. The leader who explains every decision, justifies every action, and reveals every thought process becomes ordinary. Authority diminishes with familiarity. The extraordinary maintains distance through selective communication. Human psychology seeks to fill information vacuums. When you provide partial information, others complete the pattern in ways that typically enhance your position. The strategic communicator provides conclusions without revealing deliberations. He delivers decisions without seeking validation. He acts without explanation. The result is not resentment, but increased respect. Observe how this manifests in hierarchies. The person with lowest status speaks most, seeking approval. The person with highest status speaks least, granting approval. This is not coincidence, but causation. Excessive communication signals need. Restrained communication signals sufficiency. Power does not seek external validation. It validates itself through results. Ambiguity-preserving silence. When precision limits options, ambiguity expands them. By refusing detailed clarification of position, the strategist maintains freedom of movement. Different observers interpret the same silence differently, typically in ways that align with their own desires. This creates maximum flexibility while minimizing resistance. This form proves especially valuable when navigating complex environments with multiple stakeholders holding conflicting interests. Detailed disclosure satisfies some at the expense of alienating others. Strategic ambiguity allows all parties to project favorable interpretations onto your position. The ability to navigate opposition without confronting it directly defines the master strategist. Carl Jung identified the power of ambiguity in his concept of the collective unconscious. The archetypal figures that resonate most deeply are those that remain partially undefined, allowing each individual to project their unique psychological content onto them. The strategic use of ambiguity taps into this same mechanism, creating a persona that becomes more powerful precisely because it is not fully articulated. The psychological power of silence. The psychological power exerted through silence transcends mere tactical advantage. It fundamentally reshapes how others perceive and respond to you. 3 psychological mechanisms activate when silence replaces expected communication. First, silence creates projection space. Humans instinctively fill informational voids, typically with content reflecting their own preoccupations. When you maintain silence at key moments, opponents project their fears onto that void. Allies project their hopes. Both reveal themselves while you remain undefined and adaptable. The power of this mechanism cannot be overstated. While others expose their mental frameworks, priorities, and vulnerabilities, you gather intelligence without reciprocating. You see exactly how they process uncertainty. You identify precisely what they fear most. And you accomplish this without active deception, merely by refusing to fill spaces they find uncomfortable. Second, silence establishes dominance in communication dynamics. The natural human response to silence is discomfort. When you demonstrate comfort with this discomfort, When you allow silence to extend beyond conventional boundaries, you display rare psychological strength. The person who breaks silence to ease tension simultaneously surrenders position. Observe how this operates in various contexts. In negotiations, the side willing to endure silence secures better terms. In confrontations, the party maintaining composure, while saying less, commands greater respect. In leadership, the figure who speaks only when necessary carries greater authority when speaking. These are not separate phenomena, but manifestations of the same psychological law. Third, silence creates mystique that amplifies perceived capability. What cannot be fully understood appears more formidable than what is completely known. By revealing little, you invite others to assume much. The incompletely defined figure becomes larger than reality could sustain. The strategically silent person benefits from this cognitive bias without actively fostering deception. Consider how differently people respond to the fully transparent versus the selectively revealed. The transparent person becomes familiar, predictable, ordinary. The selectively revealed person remains somewhat unknowable, and unknowability triggers both caution and respect. Others assume capability rather than incapacity when information is absent. This presumption of strength becomes self-reinforcing as opponents hesitate to challenge what they cannot fully assess. The modern fetishization of transparency directly contradicts these strategic principles. Contemporary culture celebrates authentic expression, immediate emotional disclosure, and constant communication as virtues. The strategist recognizes these not as strengths, but as systematic surrender of advantage. Transparency serves those who would control you, not those who would respect you. This is not advocacy for dishonesty. Strategic silence isn't about deception, but about recognition of reality. Not all information requires equal distribution. The disciplined mind distinguishes between disclosure that advances objectives and disclosure that compromises them. It resists the emotional impulse to speak without strategic purpose. Many fall into the trap of confusing strategic silence with passive timidity. Nothing could be further from reality. The lion does not announce the hunt. A wolf does not telegraph the kill. The strategist does not confuse restraint with weakness. Silence is not absence of action, but preparation for decisive action at the optimal moment. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this when he wrote of the pathos of distance, the ability of superior minds to detach themselves from immediate emotional reactions and operate from a position of strategic clarity. This distance is not emotional coldness, but the necessary space between impulse and action that allows for true mastery. The practitioner of strategic silence operates from a position of maximum information and minimal exposure. He knows his opponent's positions, while they can only guess at his. He understands their priorities, while they remain uncertain of his. He identifies their weaknesses, while they struggle to assess his. From this asymmetric position, victory becomes mathematical certainty rather than speculative hope. The 5 domains of discipline. To implement these principles requires systematic discipline in 5 domains. Master each domain not in isolation, but as an integrated system of control. First, practice information asymmetry in all significant interactions. Before revealing your position on any consequential matter, ensure you fully understand the positions of all other parties. Ask questions that extract maximum intelligence while revealing minimum intention. Listen for what remains unsaid rather than responding only to what's explicitly stated. The most valuable information often hides between words. This approach yields particular advantage in negotiations, where understanding the counterparty's true constraints often matters more than articulating your own. It applies equally in organizational contexts, where comprehending colleagues' motivations before committing to positions prevents unnecessary conflict while enabling more effective influence. The goal is not manipulation, but strategic positioning based on complete rather than partial information. Second, cultivate strategic ambiguity when premature clarity would limit options. This doesn't require deliberate confusing opacity, but conscious avoidance of unnecessary precision. Articulate vision while preserving flexibility in execution. Maintain multiple potential paths forward. Allow others to fill details with assumptions that serve your objectives, rather than constraining them prematurely. Third, develop comfort with silence as a power position. Train yourself to endure the discomfort that makes others speak unnecessarily. Most people experience silence in conversation as unbearable tension and rush to fill it, often revealing more than intended or making unnecessary concessions. By embracing rather than avoiding these moments, you create significant advantage. In negotiations, this means allowing silence after stating your position, rather than nervously qualifying or weakening it. In conflicts, it means listening completely to criticism before responding, rather than defensively interrupting. In leadership, it means delivering decisions without excessive justification, allowing them to stand on merit rather than explanation. Fourth, master selective disclosure as strategic communication. The effective operator doesn't maintain complete secrecy, but creates deliberate contrast between what is revealed and what remains private. By sharing some information while withholding other data, you direct attention precisely where advantageous, while maintaining critical ambiguity elsewhere. Fifth, eliminate emotional reactions that trigger unnecessary speech. The compulsion to defend against criticism, correct misperceptions, or justify decisions often stems from emotion rather than strategy. The disciplined mind recognizes these impulses without acting on them. Not every attack requires defense. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every decision requires justification. Perception management. Perception management represents the ultimate application of strategic silence. The ability to shape how others perceive you without directly attempting to persuade them constitutes the highest form of influence. Three principles govern this domain. First, control the information environment rather than the information itself. Rather than trying to force specific conclusions, strategic operators control what information becomes available for consideration. By selectively revealing certain data while withholding other elements, they guide perception without apparent manipulation. Second, allow contradiction to exist without resolution. When others hold conflicting perceptions about you, resist the impulse to clarify which perception is correct. Multiple interpretations create strategic flexibility that singular definition eliminates. The capacity to operate effectively across different perceptual frameworks represents extraordinary advantage. Third, recognize that absence creates presence. What remains undefined expands in perception. By deliberately leaving certain aspects of yourself, your position, or your capabilities undefined, you allow others' imaginations to fill these spaces, typically with content that serves your objectives without requiring your direct assertion. Overcoming modern conditioning. Implementing strategic silence requires overcoming modern conditioning toward constant communication. 4 specific barriers typically prevent mastery of these principles. Recognize and systematically eliminate each barrier. First, overcome the social validation impulse. Contemporary culture rewards constant expression and performative transparency. Resisting this pressure requires recognizing that social approval and strategic effectiveness often stand in direct opposition. Choose effectiveness over validation. The path to power rarely aligns with the path to popularity. Second, eliminate emotional reaction to provocation. When attacked, criticized, or misrepresented, the undisciplined mind responds immediately, seeking to correct, defend, or counterattack. The strategic mind evaluates whether response serves objectives or merely satisfies emotional urges. Often, strategic silence in the face of provocation creates more advantage than any possible response could generate. Third, develop comfort with being temporarily misunderstood. The need for immediate validation of intent, character, or position often undermines long-term strategic advantage. The capacity to allow others to maintain incorrect perceptions until the optimal moment for correction represents advanced strategic discipline. Fourth, suppress status-seeking communication. Much unnecessary disclosure stems not from strategic necessity, but from desire to demonstrate knowledge, experience, or insight. The disciplined operator values effectiveness above recognition. He recognizes that being perceived as the smartest person in the room rarely advances objectives as effectively as being the most strategic person in the room. The invisible master. The integration of strategic silence into all domains of operation transforms results without transforming methods. The same actions executed from a position of information advantage yield dramatically different outcomes. The same decisions made with complete rather than partial understanding of others' positions produce superior results. The same objectives pursued with disciplined rather than reactive communication reach fulfillment more efficiently. The final irony of strategic silence lies in its invisibility. Its most successful practitioners remain largely unrecognized precisely because their mastery manifests as absence rather than presence. We notice the loud, the expressive, the transparent, while those who truly direct events operate beyond common perception, shaping reality without drawing attention to their methods. In a world drowning in noise, the disciplined silence cuts through chaos like a blade. In an environment obsessed with appearance, the strategic operator focuses solely on reality. In a culture that rewards constant communication, the master of silence creates power through deliberate restraint. He speaks only when speech serves him better than silence. He reveals only what advances rather than hinders objectives. He shapes perception without seeking validation. The path to mastery begins with a single discipline. Shut your mouth. Observe more. Speak less. Reveal selectively. Act decisively. Let results speak while others are still talking about intentions. The strategic operator doesn't win through superior force, but through superior positioning. And positioning begins with the discipline of the tongue. Those who understand these principles operate in a different realm from those who don't. While the masses chase approval through constant communication, the strategic operator creates power through calculated restraint. While the transparent reveal everything and control nothing, the disciplined reveal nothing and control everything. This is not manipulation, but recognition of reality. In human affairs, perception precedes reality. Silence shapes perception, and the master of silence becomes the master of all. The ancient strategists understood what modern minds have forgotten. True power never announces itself. It moves unseen. It speaks rarely, but decisively. It reveals nothing while learning everything. It wins not through superior resources, but through superior discipline. It prevails not by dominating conversations, but by controlling outcomes. In the eternal competition for power and influence, victory belongs not to the loudest voice, but to the most disciplined silence. Not to the most authentic expression, but to the most strategic restraint. Not to the most transparent communicator, but to the most selective revealer. The masses will continue to mistake noise for power, confession for strength, and transparency for truth. Let them. Their misconception creates the very advantage that the strategic operator exploits. The final measure of strategic mastery is not what you say, but what you accomplish while saying nothing at all. Power doesn't speak, it acts. It doesn't explain, it demonstrates. It doesn't seek understanding, it creates results. Let others talk themselves into irrelevance. The strategic silence cuts through the noise of the world, creating the focused clarity from which true power emerges.